Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We are reporting out of closed session. We have one item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, reporting out of closed session. One item, the motion will be to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Thank you. Recorded vote. Oh, I need someone to move it, sorry. Someone like Councillor Gardner, thank you. Second, Councillor Gilliland. Recorded vote.
Recorded vote has been requested for the only item of council reporting out of closed session. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote?
No.
Councillor Gilliland? Sorry, you're on mute there, Councillor.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys hasn't joined us yet. Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
And Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Clerk, confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that? Did I freeze? Did I freeze? Someone like to move the confirming bylaw? Councilor Thompson, second. Am I frozen or is everyone else frozen?
You're frozen.
I think you're frozen.
I'm frozen?
Yeah, you're frozen.
All right, did you want to second that, Councilor Humphreys?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Gardner, Councilor Kim, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned from that. Mr. Clerk, it is 7:02. I will call this council meeting to order. Council, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councilor Humphreys, second. Councilor Gilliland. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Mr. Clerk, are we going to do recorded on all of them?
That's the normal process, sir, if that's all right with you.
That's fine.
Okay, record vote for approval of the agenda. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
And Councillor Humphreys.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Community presentations, we don't have any. Delegations, none. Consent agenda, would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda or any quick questions? Councilor Humphreys?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me okay? Yep. On the consent agenda, just 1 second. I want to make sure I've got the right one in front of me. May I pull 712, if that's okay?
We're not there yet, but okay.
I'm sorry, I thought that was part of the consent as standing. My apologies.
Fine. Anything on the consent agenda?
No.
Otherwise, can you get a motion to approve 6.1 to 6.6?
Approved.
Councilor Kim, Councilor Humphreys. Call the vote, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record vote for the consent agenda items tonight. Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
Councillor Humphreys?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Okay, standing committee reports. Councilor Humphreys, I'll start with you.
Thank you. May I please pull item 712?
So you want, yep, 7.1.2.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
You know, I may have mistaken that. I'm sorry, I got to pull the GC.
Yes.
It's 5.2.
Okay, so you want 7.2.5.
Yes, you got it. Thank you. 7.2.5. Thank you. My apologies, guys.
It's okay.
There's
So you don't want
17 documents.
You don't want 7.1.2? No,
No.
okay.
My apologies, guys.
I'll just go around. Councilor Gardner, did you want to pull anything?
7.2.3.
7.2.3, okay. Councilor Gallo, did you want to pull anything? No? Thank you. Councilor Kim, did you want to pull anything?
No, I think everything's good now.
Okay, Councilor Gillet?
7.2.2.
7.2.2. Okay. Councilor Thompson, do you want to pull anything?
7.1.5.
7.1.5. Okay, is that all? Okay, can I get a motion to approve all the remaining items excluding 7.1.5, 7.2.2, 7.2.3, and 7.2.5? Someone like to move that? Councilor Gardner, second. Councilor Kim. Mr. Clerk, call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record a vote for the items not pulled for further discussion. Councilor Kim,
Yes.
Councilor Gilliland,
Yes.
Councilor Humphries,
Yes.
Councilor Gallo,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
Councilor Thompson,
Yes.
and Mayor Marakis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So we will move now to the items requiring discussion, and we will start with 7.1.5. Councilor Thompson, you pulled that one.
I'll put the recommendation on the floor.
Thank you. Someone like to second that? Councilor Kim, and just for everyone's knowledge, the recommendation is that report number FIN 20-015 be received for information. Councilor Thompson?
Yep. This report was presented to us back in June. At the time, it was immediately deferred. There were no questions at that time, but some councillors had indicated that they wanted some more time to do some follow-up and have some questions. So I don't know if they've had those questions answered in the interim, but I thought I would just pull it just in case so that they would have this opportunity to ask those questions they alluded to back in June. And if there's none, then that's fine.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Being none. Clerk? Call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record a vote for 7.1.5 on this evening's agenda. Councilor Gilliland,
Yes.
Mayor Marakis,
Yes.
Councilor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilor Humphries,
Yes.
Councilor Kim,
Yes.
Councilor Gardner,
Yes.
and Councilor Gallo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. 7.2.2, 2020 interim forecast update report as of August 31, 2020. This one is that report number FIN 20-026 be received for information. Councilor Gilliland, you pulled this one. Would you like to move the recommendation?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Would
I'll
someone like to second that? Councilor Thompson. Councilor Gilliland, floor is yours.
Thank you. I had a few questions offline to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, and she kind of went over above, so I want to thank her for that. And I asked a couple good questions about when we're to expect the numbers for the year for December 1st. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to ask the questions so the public can hear the answers. What were the losses on the waiving of the tax and water bill fees?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
For you, Mr. Mayor, so the losses that we had on tax-related fees, which include penalties, reminder notices, and other administrative fees, was $480,700. That's what we're forecasting to the end of this year. And we also are forecasting a loss on water penalties at $165,800.
Thank you.
Councilor
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, how much in taxes was deferred through the COVID-19 program?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the total deferred to December 1st is currently $1.98 million. This includes 17 residential properties and 6 commercial properties. Most of that is related to the commercial properties at $1.89 million.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So what you're saying is, I guess, $0.1 million or $100,000 is really related to the residential property taxes at this point, forecasted.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. About 100,000 relates to residential properties.
Okay, that's pretty decent. And how much of the tax is not collected compared to last year? I think this is a really great perspective.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So while comparing the 2 years is a bit challenging because the timing of when the tax bills being collected is different compared to last year, when we adjust for that timing and considering the deferral, we're about 10% higher on the uncollectible amount to date. And this is partially because of the amount that's being deferred through our deferral program. So once we get to December 1st, which is the final installment date, and all those deferred taxes are due in, we'll have a better understanding of what the true uncollectible amount will be past that. So we should be able to have an update by council in December.
Councilor.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I look forward to the report in December, keeping an eye on it. And I want to thank you guys for doing a great work and keeping on top of this, because it's really important to keep our eyes wide open as things change and shift very rapidly. You know, we are in a stage 2, so who knows what's going to forecast in front of us. So I really appreciate you guys are on top of this. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also like to thank staff. I think it's been a very difficult time for them, and I think they've done a good job. And I also look forward to seeing the updated report.
Thank you. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. Certainly we've talked about this and appreciate all the work that staff have gone into it. It's good to hear some of the comments from my fellow colleagues. I know that back in August when we were dealing with Library Square, Councillor Gilliland had a lot of concerns about the status of the town and the impact COVID would have, and she was really adamant about a wish to delay things for 120 days until this report came out. So I'm interested to know whether or not she's would have been supportive of Library Square given this information.
Councilor, I'll leave it up to you if you'd like to answer that or not.
I can definitely answer that offline. You're putting me on the spot, but I do have my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilor Humphreys.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. And I just, again, wanted to reiterate or echo my colleagues' comments. It means a lot to me and to the residents personally, and I just want to thank you very much. I was confident before, and I knew that I wouldn't be surprised. And I love the consistency, the reliability, and the professionalism. I really commend staff. And I have to tell you, when we have confidence in this, it makes all the difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record vote for 7.2.2 on this evening's agenda. Councillor Gallo. Counselor Kim,
Yes.
Counselor Thompson,
Yes.
Counselor Humphreys,
Yes.
Mayor Maracus,
Yes.
Counselor Gilliland,
Yes.
and Counselor Gardner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. 7.2.3, tree removal permit application for 126 Temperance Street and 53 Metcalf Street. One, that report number OPS 20-016 be received. Two, that the tree removal permit application for 126 Temperance Street be approved. Three, that the tree removal permit application for 53 Metcalf Street be approved. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councilor Gardner, are you moving that? You pulled this?
No, no, I'm not.
Would someone like to move that? Councilor Humphreys, second. Councilor Kim. Councilor Gardner, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very complicated issue, as I found out speaking with Ms. Van Leeuwen and Mr. Downey. Mr. Downey, could you, could you just give the rundown that you gave me on the phone?
Mr. Downey?
Okay, now I can't see myself now, so the way that it's set up. So yes, absolutely, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe the concern is the tree on Metcalf. The tree on Temperance seems to be no issue, but the black walnut on 53 Metcalf was the concern. Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor? Everything okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. The tree was started to be pruned or ultimately to be cut down. We were notified of the activity by the resident. Bylaw went out and stopped the pruning of the tree, the removal of the tree, and in accordance with our tree bylaw. I'll call it the tree bylaw. It's actually called a bylaw to prohibit and or regulate the injury or destruction of trees on private property in the town of Aurora. The resident was then notified of the process they needed to go through in order to get a permit to remove the tree. They went through the permit process, which since the tree was in a heritage area, they needed to go through the Heritage Committee. The Heritage Committee, we put a report forward to the Heritage Committee. They reviewed that report and recommended the removal of the tree. That committee recommendation is now before council. If council approves those minutes of the Heritage Committee or the recommendation of the Heritage Committee, the resident will be permitted to cut down the tree.
Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Downey. So according to what you've just said, the resident did follow the process. And can you say how it got to be the process that it would go to the Heritage Committee? Is it to do with heritage trees or heritage districts or just old trees?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If you recall, and some of you were around for the review of this bylaw, I believe it went through two councils. It took 4 or 5 years actually to get it approved. But as part of that review of the bylaw, it was recommended that any tree within a heritage designation or any heritage tree needed to have Heritage Committee have a look at it and determine whether or not that tree should be removed or could be removed or had to remain. So that process was identified back with the approval of the bylaw in 2016. Since then, we've sent several reports to Heritage Committee on trees that are located within the heritage districts, and ultimately brought those reports forward to council, and council approved those recommendations, and the trees were removed. So it's part of the permit application, but only for heritage trees or trees that are within a heritage district.
Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Downey. with respect to this tree, so many of the branches were cut off. I don't know if the tree is viable, but at that point, well, the residents didn't realize that it was a listed property and they had to go through the Heritage Committee?
Mr. Downey?
Through Mr. Mayor, that's my understanding. Regardless of whether they knew or they didn't know, they didn't follow the process, and ultimately we had to stop, or they had to stop the tree cutting or the tree pruning through order of the bylaw department, and had to then go through this process. So if they had not gone through the process, they would have been in violation of bylaw.
Counselor?
Thank you. And I didn't ask you this afternoon, Mr. Downey, but what if the tree had been cut down without going through the process? Is there any penalty that's imposed? Is there anything to stop a resident who's not aware of the process cutting down a tree and then there are no repercussions, or there are repercussions?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. Section 14 of the bylaw deals with penalties. And there's a minimum fine of $500, a maximum fine of $100,000.
Counselor?
Wow. So with the $100,000 fine, that would be many trees? Like, what would trigger a $100,000 fine?
So that would be a process that we would work through with our bylaw department. That there would have to be an assessment done of the value of the tree or trees, depending on what the situation is. So with that value, then we would move forward with a case where we would then identify what the level of that penalty would be and move forward with prosecution.
Counselor?
Thank you. So there's actually a written process or policy of how to determine the value of the tree or trees?
Mr. Downey?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, absolutely. Compensation bylaw, retreat compensation bylaw deals with how we value trees. So it's a process that we use in several occasions, and we would use exactly the same process in evaluating this if there was a penalty to be paid. But as I said, this resident has actually gone through the process.
Counselor?
So it's a little bit interesting, because had another resident not seen this and not reported this, the tree would have been cut down, and then we would go through the other process that's in the bylaw.
Correct. We would recommend that penalties be imposed on that resident.
Counselor?
Very interesting situation. Thank you, Mr. Downey. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor Humphries?
Oops. Sorry, guys. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. Sorry, through Mr. Mayor, and yeah, I appreciate Councillor Gartner bringing this up. A little bit dismayed that it was figured out this way. You know, there is a process that should have been followed, and it's a heritage area and heritage tree. So very, very disappointed for sure. We did receive the information at HAC, and due to the situation and some of the concerns of the resident, you know, in terms of safety for children, I drove by the home and I understand the proximity of the tree. And, you know, obviously it's half bare now with many limbs removed. I could imagine what it was like, and probably approaching both homes and causing some problems. So that can happen. I just, as Councillor Gartner mentioned, I don't respect how it was done. And I wish it was done properly so that we didn't have to be here discussing it this way. So I hope that residents take note that please, you know, follow the tree bylaw process. And if you don't, there can be some serious ramifications. This one was a resident observing allowed that not to carry through. So anyway, thank you very much, Councillor Gardner, for bringing it up. But I hope that, moving forward that we have a residence following process. Thanks, Mr. Downey, for the explanation as well.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak for the first time before I go back to Councillor Gardner? No, Councillor Gardner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess back to Mr. Downey again. I echo Councillor Humphrey's comments. Was this process triggered by the fact that this was a tree on a listed property?
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's my understanding.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record a vote for item 7.2.3 on this evening's agenda. Councillor Humphreys,
Yes.
Councillor Kim,
Yes.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Gallo,
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland,
Yes.
Mayor Maracus,
Yes.
Councillor Gardner,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Next item, 7.2.5, Heritage Permit Application for 31 Catherine Avenue. Recommendation is that the report number PDS 20-062 be received, and 2, that the Heritage Permit Application HPA 2020-10 to permit the demolition of an existing detached garage and construction of a new addition at 31 Catherine Avenue be approved, subject to the elimination of the one-story extension at the rear of the proposed addition. Councillor Humphrey, you pulled this. Did you want to move that?
I don't necessarily want to move it that way, Mr. Mayor. So if anyone else would like to, and I'd like to speak to a change this evening, if possible.
Would someone like to move that? Councillor Gardner, second. Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Humphreys, floor is yours.
Thank you. Through Mr. Mayor. So last week we had quite a bit of a discussion on this, and I understand my confusion in terms of some of the information in front of me and some discussion from the hack meeting. And so a couple of things I want to start out with is that, and I was advised of this by a resident, that, committee provides feedback often and sometimes does not make a decision, and that council and staff make recommendations and council makes the decision. So when I went through this and in quite detail, I looked at a couple of things that stood out for me. So if I can back up one step and then I'll get back to this. So this week I was really, something bothered me a little bit about, just a little bit about the conversation, and that I remember a lot of the conversation at the hack was quite positive. However, because it's in the Northeast District, we do have very strict guidelines, and really you follow them, and it's black and white, and there really shouldn't be any discussion. But what struck me was what can be done here versus what was proposed. And there was a lot of great work done from the resident and from the planner that he worked with. So I went to the site to look at exactly what was being proposed and what could be done. And I found it one of those occasions where when you actually go to the property and take a good look, what's proposed is lovely and going to look way better than what we could possibly allow without further discussion in terms of the recommendation here by staff. So I went around, I looked, I'll be honest, super young couple, young children, lovely street. Obviously, what I would really like is a little bit of consideration that we perhaps allow what the resident is looking for. This is my perspective, but I would like to quote the Heritage Advisory Review minutes. There was a member of the committee that was, really proposing to stick by the absolute jurisdiction of the Northeast District. And at first I said, yeah, we need to do that for sure. But something was nagging at me, and I'm really happy I went there today because I could see what he's doing would only enhance the area. And from the street frontage, there would be literally no impact. There is something further they need to do, that even if they do this, and currently it's the situation, is that they're already over the site limit. It's like what they call it, non-conforming, at this moment. So even if they move forward, that's why we're at the recommendation is to remove the one-story building, attached one-story building, and then add the garage as he's indicating. But just wanted to get, bear with me, I'll be really quick here. So the Heritage Advisory Committee reviewed the application and highlighting in the details the proposed additions, noting that the overall footprint will exceed the requirements highlighted in the Heritage Conservation District, and that a minor variance application would need to be required for the minimum side yard setback for the Committee of Adjustment. So even if this is proposed this evening, and if council would consider, maybe not, I like you to listen, hear me out, and then have some discussion, but this still needs to go to Committee of Adjustment. So it's not going to be done, finished here. From a heritage perspective, we could stick to the guns and that's go back, and this is all we're allowing you. So if I could finish and then end with a comment. So the committee inquired about the permitted lot coverage with respect to the zoning of the property, the finish of board and batten, and the materials to be used for the addition, and the applicant and staff provided clarification. We were good. The committee discussed about the proposed attached garage addition, the permitted limits. We expressed concerns about the additional building depth. The committee acknowledged that the proposed addition is considered compatible with the original one-story building and matches the architectural appearance of the building from the front elevation, mitigating the visual impact to the surrounding streetscape. I think that's really critical. After we reviewed the minutes, some members came back and said, please note, however, it was noted that the additional building depth may result in a built form that's not in keeping with their surrounding homes. So basically what we're talking about here is depth that is perhaps longer than we would allow in this area. Again, this needs to go to Committee of Adjustment.
Councilor Humphries?
Yep. Am I over?
Yes. I'll come back to you.
I never do that.
I'll come back to you if no one else wants to speak.
I never do that. One more minute and I'm done.
No, I can't. If I allow you, I have to allow everyone. I'm sorry.
I understand.
Councilor Gardner, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. I understand what Councillor Humphries is saying, but it poses a problem. And to me, when somebody buys a home and they want to do some work on it, if they go to the town's website, it's very clear. There's a page on it and it describes additions. And on that page, it says our OP section 13.5 refer to the district plan. And then if you look at the district plan, it says the overall depth cannot exceed. So it's the homeowners could have known this. And certainly I don't know if they went to the building department, but they would have found that out from the building department. And that discussion at HAC, there was a staff report, and I believe one of the residents was agreeing with the staff report. And then we got a staff report to GC, and the staff report was agreeing with the staff report that went to HAC. So I think we have to keep to the rules in the district plan. Or, what good is a district plan? And as the mayor said last week, basically the mayor said that as well last week. And so I don't think we can make an exception in this case. I think it has to be looking at it from the greater good of the community. The greater good of the community is the Heritage District. And there's a lot of non-conforming in the Heritage District because that Heritage District didn't become a Heritage District until, basically in the scheme of time a few years ago. So we're going to have a lot of these non-conforming issues. And I don't think that we can make a decision based on that because we now have a Heritage District. So thank you for fighting for the homeowner. And I can't disagree on what you said, but I think there is a greater good here and it has to be the Heritage District. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm going to kind of say what I kind of thought before, and it was more or less, what we're trying to achieve. And I guess one question I had, just because I'm new to the whole districting guidelines and such, and where it comes from, who writes these guidelines in our district? Is it something that's like a provincial thing that's overarching? Is it something that we've written? Like, could someone please explain that to me?
Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor. Typically, it's a two-phase process. The first phase is a study that's done by a heritage consultant with significant public consultation involved. And once that study is complete, then it basically evolves into a district plan with policy statements and guidelines and illustrations to help guide and protect the heritage for the district once it's adopted by council.
Councillor.
Thank you. So this was something that was done internally specifically for Aurora, specifically for that area, that we have created these guidelines based on that area and the feedback we got back then. Is that correct?
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Thank you. And how long ago were these guidelines created, if I may?
Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Before I got here, that's for sure. I believe they were in the mid 2000s. Councillor Gartner can correct me on that.
I wrote it down somewhere, but it's, I would say, am I allowed to speak, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councillor.
I think it's about 8 years old.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. I guess where I'm kind of going with this is, creating these guidelines, and you're trying to obviously create for the better good of the site, the context, the heritage, and everything conforming. And your goal is to really achieve that. And as far as the depth, I'm going to make an assumption, although I can't say for certain that was the intent. But as far as the depth was concerned, I guess more for infill and trying to make sure that people aren't taking away from the views in their backyards by instituting these depths. Although in this case, we're talking about removing a large 2-car garage at the very back of the property and repurposing it the side of the house up and attached. And I don't know if that depth ever included or anticipated that the depth would be because of a garage versus just an addition. And again, I'm just kind of looking at the greater good in the sense that if it's good architecture, good design, it's two shakes of one or the other, you're either going to have a 2-car garage on the side of your house, it's attached and up and it looks very inconspicuous and keeping, or you're going to put it way at the back of your house, legal non-conforming in the way backyard. What is it? What is it we're trying to preserve here? What's the look? Because and I'm going to say this again, it's like we're telling the owners, there's no way you can have a 2-car garage unless it's set in the back on your legal non-conforming garage that you have there now. That to me is kind of like a deterrent, really. And if we are mandating within those guidelines that we're to say, there's no way that you can rejig your house or rejig something so you can have a 2-car garage attached to your house, it's got to be at the back. And if that's what we're trying to achieve and that's part of that look, I get it. But I don't know if that was what they were trying to achieve by maximizing that depth. I can understand if it was like a full-on addition, plus you had this huge garage at the back and all of a sudden you're taking away all the the square footage on the ground, but I think they're actually enhancing the backyard and the beauty and making it very inconspicuous. And there's a time and a place when we can make a decision and say, no, this is actually kind of what we're trying to achieve here. This makes sense. And maybe one of those things, just like you don't predict these things. You don't know that that's going to happen. Just like with anything, just like with this, what we're going through now, like with the uncertainty going on, nothing's ever perfect the first time. And I just feel like this report that's been brought forward and the changes that are being made, there is room to question whether or not that we should allow them to do this extra few feet. If they're going to take away that garage and it's going to be backyard, to me, it's good design. I'm going to leave it at that. But Councillor Humphreys, thank you for taking this forward and looking at it in that light, because I just need to kind of understand where we were going with the design guidelines and the benefit of what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kim, and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Heritage is not my strong suit. It's not my field of expertise, and I rely heavily on the Heritage Advisory Committee, and those who have a keen interest in that area and keen strength and knowledge in that area. Those like Councillor Gardner and Humphreys and the Hack Committee. Last week I voted with the staff recommendation. After Councillor Gardner and the mayor, spoke about, this is a specific heritage area and we have the rules. There was sufficient public consultation. And if there's any one area where there should be where there shouldn't be any flexibility, should heritage zones or areas be that one area where there should be inflexibility. I've always been in any field that there should be flexibility and there should be areas to move. In planning, we talk about the provincial policy statement, and even in the regional and town official plan, there is wiggle room, and that's intentional because with time things change, with population increases or other changes. There's a need to be adaptable. And I recall when we were doing the stable neighborhoods design guidelines last year or 2 years ago, the consultant talked about the eclectic nature of our stable neighborhoods, and it's a great trend to continue the eclecticness of a neighborhood because that's what brings it the value. And even though we have a heritage neighborhood and it's almost like we're trying to stop time, for a certain period of time, this is the way homes looked and we want to keep it that way. And there's value to that, but at the same time, people's their flavor or their tastes change. And I guess in the end, the way that the homeowners designed this home, it clearly does not change the look and feel that, it is still a heritage home. There's no doubt about that. But the changes made it actually, the changes are better. It made it a better place to live in. And so when you have all these positives, do I want to stay consistent with the rules just for the sake of staying within the rules? And, my instincts tell me that, there always has to be some wiggle room. And when the practical reasons for this change makes it better, and when the look and feel makes it better, and it doesn't change the heritage value of the home, I'm in favor of, what Councillor Humphreys is opining and cheerleading here, so I'll be in support of Councillor Humphrey's upcoming recommendation.
Mayor Maracus, you're on mute.
Thanks for letting me know. So first, so go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Waters. Mr. Waters, keeping in mind that our next GC meeting, we're going to have the urban design guidelines come up. You know, we're talking a lot about, you know, heritage district plans and guidelines and so forth, but it's always been my impression in our discussions that guidelines are really just a planning tool. They provide, you know, general advice and a barometer by which to, you know, help and support the construction or the development of a site. But at the end of the day, the guidelines are a tool. They are not a hard and fast rule. Is that fair to say, or perhaps you'd like to phrase it in your own words?
Mr. Waters?
You, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I do have the date for the district plan approval. That was, I believe, June of 2006. So I just wanted to get that on the record. You're 100% correct, Councillor Thompson. The district plan is not an official plan. It is essentially a one-size-fits-all approach to protecting heritage within a specific area. But, you know, through my career, you know, it's really subject to some interpretation and some flexibility, because, you know, depending, like each site or each property or permit should be evaluated on its own merits. The guidelines do help influence the review process. But, you know, as you correctly state, it is a guideline. It's a tool that you know, planners and builders use to help facilitate and guide the design of an addition or a new home. So, you know, that's essentially the intent of the district plan.
Councillor?
Thank you. And, you know, I echo some of the comments that have been raised by my fellow colleagues. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, staff are charged with, you know, taking into consideration those guidelines. But as Mr. Waters indicated, you know, you view it on a case-by-case basis and you make your recommendations and you look at, you know, at the end of the day, you know, is it good planning? And I think, you know, Councillor Humphreys makes a good argument with regards to, you know, where, you know, the discussion is leading, and I'm fully in support of it.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Waters. If we were to, well, not approve this, and I don't know if maybe I missed it. Maybe Councillor Humphreys has something. Councillor Kim had referred to something different that Councillor Humphreys is proposing. I didn't hear what it was. Maybe I missed something. But if we were to, as Councillor Humphreys is suggesting, let's say we don't move ahead with this, we move ahead with something else, and it goes to the Committee of Adjustment. My only reason that I'm somewhat supportive of that is because that would be the first time that at least the public would be involved in any of this discussion, because up to now they weren't, other than through our committee. And that was my hiccup last week, that this process doesn't allow the public to weigh in. Although I think through the delegate, we heard that the neighbors are okay. Would it, first off, obviously open up to the public? And secondly, let's say the committee doesn't agree. What happens then?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I think it's important to note that if council does not make a decision by January 5th of next year, then the permit is automatically approved. If council decides to refuse the permit tonight, then the applicant can appeal it to the LPAT. So they have that right to appeal the permit. The permit, sorry, if you approve the permit tonight, it does not provide any development rights over and above the Committee of Adjustments decision for a minor variance. They need the variance. Going through the heritage permit process just checks off a box for them to proceed the building department once they receive the minor variance. So it will not prejudice or influence staff's recommendation on the minor variance application.
Councillor?
Thank you. And through you, I guess the only real issue, if I understood it correctly, is that the last statement where it says subject to elimination of the one-story extension at the rear of the proposed addition. That is what the owners have an issue with.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. It's the extension beyond the back of the house, which allows for the second, the one-story garage to allow for the tandem parking.
Okay.
Councillor?
And not to anticipate what Councillor Humphreys is going to do, but if that is removed and the balance of the resolution moves forward, it goes to the Committee of Adjustment, public process, not necessarily on the heritage for other reasons. We've issued the permit to demolish that building, but they still have to deal with the construction of the new structure, heights, setbacks, all of that still need to be dealt with.
Mr. Water?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. And also they do require a formal demolition permit from building department as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys, before I go back to you, I just have a few questions. Mr. Waters, I rewatched the tape from the Heritage Advisory Committee. My sense of listening to the conversation around the table was that the majority were supportive, had some concerns but were supportive. So I'm just wondering why the staff recommendation didn't really relay that message of support.
To you, Mr. Mayor. That's my understanding as well, is that there was general consensus around the table to support the permit, but the interpretation of the district plan was taken very literally, which meant a refusal of the permit application. That's my understanding, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I really appreciate all the comments. So just to take a step back, what I was going to end with was that if that change happens tonight, this is not a free-for-all. I mean, I completely respect the Heritage District policies and procedures, and they're there for a very important reason, as Councillor Gardner stated, and I respect that wholeheartedly. I respect the opinions of the HAC committee because they were very clear on that piece. But to your point, Mr. Mayor, there was a general, it looks good, but when you look at the actual policy, it's, so going there this evening, right now there's a big double car garage and it's going to be gone, and it's going to be a long, narrow to, by the house. So not even in the backyard. It's such a nice change. And when I saw that, and I saw this heritage home is incredibly stunning and respectful of the area. That's why I wanted it to be real. And by the way, the homeowner did not reach out to me. Nobody did. I did. I reached out. I called Carlson and I said, "Who may I have the contact email?" Because something was nagging at me. Again, I couldn't find my notes. I was really upset about that. And if I would have felt that the committee was completely against it, I know I would have been more comfortable in my discussion last week. Yes, there was some members that were like, no, we got to follow the guidelines, but that's our feedback to staff. But other than that, when you looked at the bigger comments, it was like we were feeling good about what we saw, the homework done by the owner. And I love the respect of this owner. Maybe I, again, taking an opportunity to meet the person and, the street. I looked at what was around. I got to go in the backyard. He allowed me, and I felt so good about that. That I just felt that if I can help these young people move in to our district and respect it and love it, that's what we're looking for. And not someone who wants to demolish the house and do something different. And, that's always an option. So I love the fact that they want to just love and adore the heritage. And I love the front aspect. It'll be almost a more hidden garage than what's there now. and taking up. And by the way, it'll be shorter. It'll go halfway to the garage that's existing today into their backyard. So the neighbors will have more grass or bushes or whatever to see, and not a building, which I thought was really amazing. I think I'm going to speak to Carlson, and maybe as a heritage group, if the owners allow us to take a drive by and a look or a view, that would also help us, because sometimes that makes all the difference. We've done it before for some bigger projects. Maybe this is something we can do in the future. But anyway, again, this is not setting precedents at all. This is just bringing forward that something I believe will only enhance the area at the end of the day. And again, it's not carte blanche, as Mr. Waters said. It's got to go to committee adjustment, becomes a public process. If there's any neighbors upset, if there's somebody upset about this discussion this evening, it can be relayed there, and the decisions are made in future. So just wanted to thank you guys very much for listening. And if I could, I'm sure there'll be other comments, I'd like to change the motion, the recommendation, that it be received, and that the recommendation is what the owners are looking for.
Okay, so Councillor,
Contrary.
that would be contrary, but what I will make a suggestion to you is that we can split the second clause into two separate clauses. So you can have one clause that states the heritage permit application to permit the demolition of an existing detached garage and construction of a new addition to 31 Catherine Avenue be approved. And then another clause that states that the permit approval will be subject to the elimination of the one-story extension at the rear of the proposed addition. So that way we don't have to get into amendments. We vote on them separately, and we'll go from there. Mr. Clark, can that be done procedurally?
Mr. Mayor, that's what I would suggest. It's council's in a tough spot with this recommendation in terms of trying to make amendments. And then if it were to be voted down, you could make a reconsideration argument when something's put back on the floor. So I think the way you've suggested keeps the recommendation intact. There's nothing new in there. And then at the end, if council can vote separately on the clauses and still vote yes for the application and then no for the removal of the addition.
Okay. Is that fair? Is that fine, Councillor Humphries? Okay, Councillor Gardner, you want to speak for a second time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hear what everybody's saying, but I think the piece that is missing is that we're calling these guidelines, but they were put in place after a lot of public consultation, a lot of expert input and work to form these guidelines. And the whole purpose of them is to respect the culture of the neighborhood. And I think they need to be respected. And because we say, well, we'll make an exception in this case, it is setting precedent. And I just can't agree with what Councillor Humphries is saying. It's to me, it's heart versus head, and I'm sorry that council seems to be leaning in that way.
At all, Council? Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Okay, before I call Councillor Gallo, go ahead, second time.
Sorry, just quickly in terms of procedurally what we're doing, I don't have a problem because I understand it, but let's just make a note that if we're lenient in this way, in this case, let's just remember this, and if it happens again, we should be consistent.
That's fine. Any other comments or questions? I was just going to state that I know I'll always fight and stand up for the Heritage District and in regards to what we need to do to uphold that plan. But I also did state last week that I would also take into consideration and if they are following the plan, I'm definitely going to then say yes to it, to that recommendation, and that's what's coming from the Heritage Advisory Committee. My interpretation, just from looking at the recommendation, was that the Heritage Advisory Committee was what they were recommending. When I watched the videotape, as I mentioned, my sense was that the majority of them were supportive of allowing for this to move forward. So now I need to take that into consideration. And while I want to uphold the plan, hearing the comments from the committee makes me look at that other side that Councillor Humphrey speaks about. The fact that we are not we're not demolishing a heritage home. What we're doing is we're making a slight modification in addition to it to preserve it, protect it, allow it to stay there for another 100, 150 years. I mean, at the end of the day, that's our objective, is it not to have these heritage homes stay constructed and have them last beyond our lifetime and beyond our children's and our grandchildren's lifetime. We want these to be around forever. And so this, I think, does that, achieves that. If, as I said, if the recommendation out of HAC was what was presented and that was what the majority of the committee wanted, well, then I would have been supporting that, and I would be supporting it again today. But because after watching the tape, what I got out of it was totally different out of the recommendation that was in front of us. So therefore, I'll be voting against the third clause. So with that, I will call a vote on, how about I call a vote on 1 and 2, and then we'll call a vote on 3, okay? So Mr. Clerk, 1 and 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, the first vote is on clause number 1 to receive the report and number 2 to approve the heritage permit application. Excuse me, Mayor Maracas, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Humphreys?
Yes.
Councillor Gardner? Sorry, Councillor, you're on mute.
No.
Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
And Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Clerk, number 3.
So the third clause, and I'll just read that out so that that all of council is aware. It is that the permit approval be subject to the elimination of the one-story extension at the rear of the proposed addition. And Councillor Gardner.
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
No.
Councillor Humphreys?
No.
Mayor Maracas?
No.
Councillor Gilliland?
No.
Councillor Thompson?
No.
And Councillor Gallo?
No.
The motion is defeated.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. All right, council, we get to the fun part of the meeting. 2021 budget introduction. 8.1. We will have a presentation by our Director of Finance, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, I will pass it off to you.
Okay. Just sharing my screen. Okay. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm happy to present to you the proposed budget for 2021 and 10-year capital plan. This presentation has been grouped into a number of segments just to break up the flow of it. So we'll go through them one by one. As you'll notice, as we go through the presentation, you'll see some blue bubbles on some of the pages. Those actually refer to page numbers in the budget binder or the online version that is available on the town's website. As you know, our multi-year budget process includes doing the 3-year budget in year 2, and we are now at year 3. So we're looking to reaffirm the operating budget for years 3 and 4. So we'll be speaking mostly to the changes to the budget that was approved last year. So here's an overview of the budget for operating and capital at a glance. This year, when we look at the operating budget, the gross expenditures include all town's operations. So that includes both the tax funded and water funded operations. And then we see the net levy. The budget this year for operating includes a tax levy increase of 2.9% in both years. In 2021, that is 0.5% lower than what was approved in the budget last year, as requested by the mayor at the Finance Advisory Committee. The capital budget has undergone a number of significant changes, so I'll get into a little bit more as we go along through this presentation. The planned 2021 expenditures are 85.7 million. We have a new concept which is being introduced, which is capital budget authority that I'll explain a bit later, and that talks to more the current and future commitments for capital projects at 189.7 million. Our 10-year plan is at 296 million. And we also have debt authority, which is tied to the capital budget authority. So that's for debt financing on growth projects. So we have 2 projects that we're recommending to debt finance, and I'll show you some information more on that as we go along. The impact for the average household for the tax and water budgets can be seen here. As you can see, a 2.9% increase on the average house assessed $800,000 equates to about $70 tax levy increase for 21 and 72 in 22. This is less than what was proposed as part of last year's budget. The average water bill for the quarterly water bill is also lower than what was proposed in last year's budget as well. So the increase is 21.39 cents or $21.39 for 2021, and then with an additional $8.07 in 2022. Earlier this year, we did an engagement survey to gather feedback from the residents on our budget. We received 60 responses to our survey, so not too many responses overall. 56 were residents of Aurora. The other 4 were made up of 3 business owners and 1 person who works in Aurora. The overall satisfaction was a bit mixed, as you can see from the chart here. We did ask in the survey where people would like to see their tax dollars being invested. The top 5 areas that were highlighted by the people who responded were parks, trails, open spaces, winter maintenance, road operations, community programs, and community planning. Residents were also seeking for more online services, so the ability to purchase services online, looking for real-time and historical water usage monitoring, and also for e-billing for tax and water. This year in 2020, we did provide the option for residents and businesses to be able to receive their water bills via email, and anyone can sign up for that on the town's website. Now getting into a little bit more detail in the operating budget. And as we talk about the operating budget, I'm referring to last year's multi-year budget that was approved as the outlook for comparative purposes versus what we were proposing. As you can see here, for gross expenditures, our non-tax revenues, and our tax levy, we have a decrease in both years in all of these elements. Our overall net tax levy is decreasing by $461,000 in 2021. This equates to about a 0.9% decrease overall, but 4.4% of that is due to a lower than forecasted assessment growth revenue that we are seeing coming in. So at Finance Advisory Committee, I mentioned we were trending towards 1.9%. We managed to get to about 2.0% for assessment growth revenue. So we did get a little bit higher than what we're expecting. And that results in an overall reduction to our tax levy that we're proposing for 2021 from 3.4% down to 2.9%. As you can see, we are not making any changes to the newly proposed permanent FTEs. And as we look at the overall tax levy here, focusing mostly in on the 2021 outlook and proposed, you can see that we're still maintaining that 0.5% for the Library Square financing and the 1% fiscal strategy. So that 0.5% reduction came out of the town operations. And we'll get into that in a lot more detail at Budget Committee on November 9th. At a high level, we've had a number of different pressures. So some of those.
Just interrupt for 1 second. I just have a procedural matter. Councillors, I need at least 4 people to have their cameras on. I only got 3 of us on right now for quorum. Thank you. So can we just make sure, take a look, you can turn it off, but just make sure there's 4 people on at all times. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Sorry, Ms. Mayor. So
I wasn't realizing that fact, so for no problem.
That's fine. I just, you know, I didn't notice it. I noticed, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we do need to have 4 cameras on at all times.
You bet.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mayor Van Kessel, sorry. to interrupt.
Okay. For the operating budget, when we're looking at the changes to the budget that we had approved last year, we have changes that are relating to non-COVID items. So these are normal town operations. And that is where the savings is to get that 0.5% reduction in the tax levy, the 461,000. We do have some COVID-19 related pressures, and we'll get into some more of that discussion on November 9th. And that's about 783,000 we're forecasting in for next year, which is planned to be funded through some one-time savings that we're expecting next year, along with the safe restart funding we received this year that we'll carry forward into next year to manage some of these pressures. We're currently anticipating that the COVID-19 pressures will continue into 2021, but not 2022. The budget is balanced in both years. You can see from here of our total expenditures of 102.6 million, about 30% of our costs are related to salaries and benefits. And just over half our budget is funded through tax, supplementary taxes or payments in lieu, with the other larger funding item being water rates and stormwater rates. Our gross spending, when we look at the various departments from that perspective, operational services does have the largest portion of the budget, and that's because they have a wide variety of services, including roads, parks, water, sewer, and waste management. But when we look at it from a net tax levy perspective, all the water, wastewater, and stormwater is funded through a separate source. So from the net budget, they are the second highest, whereas Central York Fire has the highest reliance on our tax levy. Our proposed user rates for this year for water and wastewater are lower than what we presented last year. The main reason for this is in 2020, so this year, York Region waived their 9% increase for their charge to us on the wholesale water and wastewater costs. This budget assumes that they will be increasing their rates by 2.9% in 21 and 22, and that's based on their 2015 water rate study. We're expecting York Region to come forward with the rates planned for 2021 later this year. So until those are finalized, we have assumed based on their previous study. As you'll see, the stormwater rates do actually increase. And we discussed this a little bit last week in our August forecast. And the reason for that is when the rates were originally calculated back in 2019, there was an incorrect assumption for the number of bills. The number of bills were assumed was too high. So we discovered that this year, and we're looking to fix that over the next 2 years. Now, despite this increase to stormwater rates, when we look at our proposed average water bill for our residents over a 3-month period, the average bill is less than what we proposed last year as our bills for 21 and 22. And that's mostly due to the savings we received this year from York Region on their wholesale cost to us. The operating budget has a number of key assumptions. The initiatives that we approved last year as part of the multi-year budget will continue. The York Region water rates will be 2.9% in each year. COVID-19 pressures will continue in 21, but not 22. And penalties on taxes will return to normal practice in 21. Assessment growth revenue for 2022 is also continued to be forecast at 2.2%, which is what we forecast in last year's multi-year budget. Next, we'll take a look at capital. There have been a number of significant changes to the capital budget and the overall capital framework. And there'll be a lot more information coming forward on this as we get into the capital budget process through our budget committee. When we look at our 10-year plan, the growth in new makes up the majority of the plan at 52%. And most of that is front-end loaded. Now, the reason for this is the plan has changed significantly. We now include all the active projects, and we're timing the projects to the years that the work is actually going to be done or when the spending will be complete. So when you look at that large amount of growth in the first year, we have projects such as Library Square and the Fire Hall included in there. Those projects typically would not have been presented again in another budget and only reported out on the closed capital reporting. When we compare our 10-year plan this year compared to last year's 10-year plan, it's $98.2 million higher. You can see on the green bars, the hash marks on the bottom, and that represents capital that was approved in previous years. We have $86.9 million of active projects that are reinserted into the plan starting in 2021 and beyond. So this is when the actual planned spending of those projects is expected to happen. In 2021, that 1 year alone, 84% of the capital that's proposed for that year is previously approved capital. So it includes some of these larger projects like Library Square, Fire Hall, and some repair and replacement work in roads, storm, and water and sewer. So as I mentioned, Capital Budget Authority is a new concept for this year. And what it does is it highlights the budget commitment required for in the past and in the future for any capital project. So Capital Budget Authority equals the life-to-date actuals to the end of the last fiscal year, the current year's forecast, the first budget year cash flow, and any budget year's cash flow as required. So, and when I say as required, we're talking about those contractual commitments that we'd make for the purchase of goods or services to complete that phase of the project or the complete project. So in 2021, what that equals is the actuals to the end of 2019, plus our 2020 forecast, our 2021 budget cash flows, and any cash flow in 2022 or beyond as required for those contractual commitments. So what it looks like for 2021 is this. We have taken the previously approved capital projects that are currently still active, and we have started as our starting point as our Capital Budget Authority going into this year. We are seeking to increase that Capital Budget Authority by $26.2 million. Once you come over to the right side, you can see the cash flow timing of when those expenditures are expected to be made. So as you can see, we have a significant amount of work in 2021 and lesser amounts in 22 and beyond. Next, I'm going to take you through reserves, and a lot of the framework changes that we have made relating to capital has had a positive impact on reserves. So if you remember, I showed you this graph last year, which showed the 2020 line, which dips negative for a number of years. As you can see now in 2021, with these changes in the framework to the capital plan, and also with our focus on really prioritizing capital projects, particularly in the first 5 years, we've made significant improvements to the tax-funded repair and replacement reserves. However, I do want to caution you because as we went through the plan, our focus was on those first 5 years. So the second 5 years may not be as complete as it needs to be. And we've also made an assumption that our increases to our capital repair and replacement reserve contributions continue to increase at a rate of 1% per year. When we look at the overall capital reserves, most of them look fairly good, but I do have some concerns about our overall growth capital reserves, and I'll get into that one a little bit more. When we look at our growth and new reserve forecasts, we have some problems beginning in 2024. So one of the things we need to do is we need to get a better handle on the timing of our growth projects and making sure that we insert them into the capital plan early enough so we can plan for our reserve requirements over the term of the capital plan. We also see this problem as part of the development charge reserves as well. As you can see, the hashed line represents where our reserve balances would go with this current 10-year plan if we were to not issue any debt. This plan recommends issuing debt for 3 capital projects. What that difference makes is it brings this line down here up to the solid line. Now, we still have some challenges starting in 2025, but we have some work to do, particularly on growth capital as we move forward, and fiscal strategy work that's coming will help with that. So one of the things we need to do is we need to get better at planning our growth capital and the timing of our future growth projects. Development charges are there to help us pay for the growth portion and maintain our existing service levels. So by inserting those in early enough, we can ensure they get inserted into the development charge bylaw and studies that happen every 5 years. One of the considerations we have to think about is post-period benefits. So this is a development charge study term. And what it means is it's growth that will affect future study periods. So this is growth that's going to be recovered over a longer period of time and generally indicates growth projects that we should consider debt financing, as we're not going to receive all the growth dollars all upfront or in a more shorter term. And we also need to consider as we move forward with our growth plan, what our benefit to existing is. So this is the portion of a growth project that's not paid through DCs. So this in most cases is paid through by the tax levy. So as we look ahead, we're going to be having more information coming forward on the fiscal strategy, and there's going to be a number of policies that are going to fall out of that fiscal strategy. is going to have an overarching view to try and make sure that Aurora is financially stable over the long term. The work we have done thus far with the fiscal strategy contributions that Aurora has taken over the last number of years, along with the changes to the framework and the capital this year, are good foundational steps for us to be able to make these changes as we move forward. We need to get a better handle on our growth capital, understand what our reserve requirements are for asset management in the long term, and try to make sure we're not hitting any fiscal shocks, and we manage our reserves and our investment income appropriately. So our next steps in our budget process is we do have a number of budget committee meetings scheduled. We will kick off the budget committee meetings on November 9th. We will start with a presentation that will focus more on some of the details of changes to the operating budget at a corporate level and by the individual departments, so we can get into some of those departmental reviews. On Monday, November 16th, we have Central York Fire, the library, the Historical Society, and Aurora Sport Hall of Fame will be coming to do their presentations, and we'll continue on with any other departmental discussions at that time. The Cultural Center will be joining us the first thing on Saturday morning on the 21st. And then before we kick off capital, the plan is I will go through another presentation, and there'll be a report that gets you a better understanding of a number of these changes that have happened in the capital budget to help you as we go through the review and approval of capital projects. And then we still have a couple of meetings available to finalize or finish up any other items as we move forward, hopefully with our considering the budget for approval on December 15th. Thank you, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Council, first, can I get someone to move the recommendation, which is that the report number FIN 20-027 be received, and 2, that the proposed 2020 to 2022 budget be referred to Budget Committee for review at its scheduled meeting starting on November 9th, 2020. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Humphreys. So questions, comments to the presentation and to the report. And I'll just remind Council, we're gonna have lots of time to discuss this starting November 9th. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. You had an engagement platform form that was showing there with a bunch of respondents, and I wasn't sure if that was in order of. It had like trails and community services, things that were important to the residents of Aurora. Was that listed in order of preference, or was that just generalized?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was the order in which the respondents rated the various items. So it was in priority order.
Thank you. Thank you. And it'd be interesting to know what the percentage was based on that priority order, just to get an idea of the popularity of that. I know that the trails system was something that's in our strategic plan and remains in our strategic plan. And as we discuss these crossings and our trail crossings and the railroads, I think it's important to kind of, I guess, highlight the fact that our residents believe that this is a top priority for our town. And I just wanted to highlight we should probably pay attention to that when we are approving things in our budget moving forward and what the town would like. So I just want to kind of point that out. The other question I had was, I know that you had mentioned at the operations that we were going to be finding some efficiencies or cuts or whatnot, that 0.5%. And you mentioned you were going to get to that later. Was there something specific that you found that was going to help reduce our operations or services that I missed?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we'll get into that a little bit later, but for that slide, if you notice, there was a reference to page 3, so tab 3, page 5. So there is more information on that section, and it details the items included in there. So there were some adjustments to compensation, and like salaries and benefits items, some benefit savings. And there was also an adjustment relating to Central York Fire Services because there was a reduction as a result of the JCC meeting with their budget that was presented. Right.
Thank you. And just out of curiosity, you had some key assumptions there, and you had specifically had said that you didn't have any assumption that COVID-19 would have any pressures in 2022. And I'm just wondering why we chose not to at least prepare for whether or not we could still be facing some pressures, just to kind of see what those differences would be.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's very early to try and figure out what some of those pressures could be. And we also haven't had the opportunity to even look at potential funding that could come from higher levels of government for 21 or 22 at that point in time. I think as we get further into 2021, as we work through the 2022 budget, then that's going to be an opportunity for us to start doing some of those adjustments. And even so, with the assumptions that we have for 2021, we'll get into those on November 9th, but a lot of them are for the first part of the year. The hope really is that we do start to see a vaccine or more of a return to normal in the first part of next year.
Councillor?
Thank you. And while I do like to believe that we'll have a vaccine in 2022 and hopefully we're all back to normal, I would just hope that, any kind of numbers we're projecting for 2022, we don't just assume it's all back to normal, because I certainly would want to know what position will we be in if it wasn't, and what that would mean. And we should also prepare for that. You mentioned that we were going to have some concerns about growth in new in the subsequent 5 years, and that's based on the first 5 years of that concern. So I just think that I would like to have some sort of preparation. I'm not saying some diving deep, and I know this is an estimation, but I would certainly want to have some sort of estimation if this is what 2021 is looking like, and if this is what 22 did look like, the same as 2021, it kind of gives us a good outlook of what to look forward to. And I just would like to have that comparator. Last question I had, you mentioned there was a bunch of organizations that will be presenting at the budget. And I guess through Mr. Mayor and Mr. Nadarozny, we had a conversation. I thought maybe the BIA would be an organization that would be presenting, or is that a different time of year?
Stale?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did talk to the BAO after the discussion that we had about BIA, sorry, after the discussion that I had with Councillor Gillan. They won't know what their year end is until sometime into March. So they don't plan on actually setting their rate until March. They also want to wait and see what the full year end brings in terms of where they are with COVID and whether or not they are even going to ask for a levy. Council will recall that last year they didn't assess a BIA levy to reflect the hardship that businesses were going through as a result of COVID, and so they're reserving their decision till later in the year. So there's really nothing for them to formally present, and they don't really know what they want to do for 2021 until they get into the new year and see what COVID is, how COVID is impacting them.
Councillor?
Thank you, and I'm glad they're taking that step. And I believe there was a report that included some of the BIA levy numbers through Mr. Mayor to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel. Is that something that you've also included in your numbers, this levy, or have we excluded that from our projections?
Ms. Wainwright?
I know we're not necessarily spending it ourselves, but I just know there was a report where you had included it, and I just felt that it probably wasn't appropriate for what we're trying to present.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for now, what we've included is the same assumption that we had in our 2020 multi-year budget for the BIA levy. There is a disclaimer in the corporate revenues and expenditures section that says that we are still waiting for the BIA to formalize what their levy is going to be for next year. But overall, it doesn't have any net impact on the town's overall tax levy increase, because this levy that is raised is only charged to the BIA directly. It does not affect any other residents.
Councillor?
Right.
Okay, perfect. That's I think that's all the questions I had for now, and I'll leave it to my fellow council members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kim?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, for giving us a foreshadowing of the budget meetings to come. It was a good overall view of what we can expect. These are questions that I could be asking during the budget meetings, but you kind of piqued my interest, and you were talking about some of the budget pressures in the growth reserves. However, it's not something that it's something that we could certainly deal with proper fiscal strategies. So could you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit? Because I can't wait for the budget meetings.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
For you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the things that we learned through going through these changes to the capital plan is that particularly when it comes to some of the tax funded reserves, there are some that are more well funded than others. So there are some that do have a shortage of funding, and the fiscal strategy is going to account for some of those changes. So as we come into next year, we're going to take a really good look at what our fiscal strategy requirements are based on a future needs basis, because right now what's happening is we are applying our contribution to reserves from the tax levy based on a historical requirement. So by doing it based on a future needs analysis, we'll have a better understanding of what those contributions over the long term need to be. So we're not going to be able to answer those questions this year. We've done more of a keen focus on those first 5 years of the budget, and there will be more work to come on 2022. So capital is in much better position, but there's definitely more to come.
Councillor?
Well, thank you very much, Treasurer.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Humphreys?
Hi, just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank staff. I really enjoy the real-time, budgeting focus. Like, there's no, it's like you spend it that year, you propose to forecast that year, it's happening that year, and it's not, as we did previously. So I want to just thank you very much. I think that's really consistent with excellent accounting. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. And I believe I understand, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, what you said about the COVID planning. But I also agree with what Councillor Gilliland has said. We don't know what's coming forward, and I guess it would be your guess at this point, but I would like to have some kind of placeholder in case we do need to be paying more attention to COVID in 2022. Anyway, I'd like to give you a call and go through this again, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland, second time.
Just quick, I just wanted to ask if I like the slideshow. You could maybe send it all as a copy of that slideshow. That would be great. So I'm going to follow up with some questions offline too.
Are you speaking about the presentation, Councillor?
Yes, because we didn't get that in eScribe, right? At least I don't have the attachment.
It should be tab 2. Am I correct, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I sent an email earlier today, which included a link to the presentation and the online version of the budget binders. So everything should be there on the web page. If you requested pardon? On the web page.
You mean eScribe, or you mean the Town of Aurora website? I'm so sorry.
It's on the Town of Aurora website.
Oh.
So I sent an email this afternoon with a link to it so that you should be able to find everything there, including your budget binder contents. Anyone who requested a physical copy, they are sitting in your mailbox.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I'll call the vote. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record a vote for the budget discussion on tonight's agenda. Councillor Humphreys?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
Mayor Marakis?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
And Councillor Gilliland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Okay, motions. 9.1, Councillor Kim, regarding Great Canadian Achievements Mural. Councillor Kim, would you like to move?
Sure, I'd like to move it forward, please.
Move your motion. Yes. Would someone like to second it? Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Kim, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think everyone is familiar with the Great Canadians Achievements mural, and prior to my investigating my motion, I had no idea it was called the Great Canadian Achievements mural. But essentially, the crux of my motion is that it's a fantastic mural. It's unique in York region and perhaps elsewhere, and it celebrates Canadian achievement from all groups. Indeed, I didn't even notice that it celebrated, Canadian donut, and amongst that you have Canadian topography in terms of Niagara Falls, and I was pleasantly happy to see that James Gladstone, the first Aboriginal senator, was on that mural as well. And, it's a great mural. And I just thought, our country is getting older. It's, I remember growing up, I thought it was a young country, at least relative to the United States and other countries. But we're getting longer in the tooth. And as we celebrate our history, those who contribute to our history is growing in numbers. And those contributors come from all walks of life and all racialized groups. And so I thought, let's continue and let's have another segment of the mural. And, there's insufficient space to add to the mural in its current location. And so, I would like staff to investigate other opportunities and locations in Aurora, and perhaps think outside of the box. It may not have to be side of a building, because it's hard to find a big slab of wall without windows. And so I would like staff to blue sky it and find another location where we can create another mural, and we can have the public contribute to who or what can be placed in the second mural. Celebrate diversity, celebrate the Canadian spirit. And I think it'd be a great, encouraging project. And especially in this COVID pandemic that we're in, it would be excellent to get together as a community of Aurora and work on a common project. I did not place a timeline in the motion. This isn't, there could be some motions where, whether it's budget oriented, where it has a date, but ideally I'd like to have some kind of feedback by January, February, if possible, in order that we can get this project started in the spring and be able to, celebrate the finished product before the end of the year next year. So, that's my timeline. And so I wanted to give staff the flexibility, because this is kind of a, first type of project in this scale. But I just want to let staff know what my timelines are. And if staff can let me know if there's a problem with that timeline, that'd be great. And that's it for now.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
I think it's a great idea. So let's find another wall. That wall belongs to that business, I believe.
I think you're correct. It belongs to the property owner.
To the property owner. And actually, they may be doing some work on that building. So anyway, thanks, Councillor Kim. I think it's a very respectful motion, and I agree.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, and I also agree. It's a really good idea. Just two quick points, and in no way am I suggesting that the councillor is making this assumption. But when I first read it, I think it's important to say that in no way were the original designers of that wall intending on omitting any. It says racialized, Canadians of racialized backgrounds. I never liked that term, but any diversity. I think to be fair to the designers of that, I don't believe, and I'm not suggesting the councillor saying this, that they would have purposefully omitted anyone on there. So this is a good transition an opportunity to expand on what they did. I think again that term Canadians of racialized background, it doesn't sit well with me.
No.
Where I think we're far more similar than we are diverse. But I support it. Looking forward to what council staff comes up with.
Thank you. Councilor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yeah, thank you. I echo comments and I want to thank Councillor Kim for bringing this motion forward. Is the next step then to see if the owners of this building would allow change there, or are we looking for a brand new spot, or are we just waiting for staff? I guess it's any of those, I guess, right? Just to confirm, maybe through you to Councillor Kim. I just want to, are we looking for a new spot or just to update that wall?
Well, based on what I wrote in the motion, it's just looking for a new spot.
Okay.
Yeah, the existing wall, there's just too many challenges. One being you need the approval of all 5 original artists, and it's just too challenging to locate and get the approval of all 5 artists. And I think it might be even challenging to get the owner's approval. But despite all that, it's just there's insufficient space. So let's just look for a new wall. Yeah.
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you. I'm actually really excited about that. I'm looking forward to where staff might found some ideal locations to place that. I also wanted just to comment, I believe years ago, like this isn't, I don't remember when this wall was changed. I would think, is it like the late 1990s or early 2000s? Because wasn't it a black and white mural first and then it was changed? I could be wrong. I guess we'll find that out later. But anyways, thank you, Councillor Kim. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing what that comes back with. And I like your timeline too.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I agree with the comments around the table that it's certainly a great motion. Thanks for bringing it forward, Councillor Kim. Just for clarification though, are you expecting staff to explore both private property locations as well as town-owned properties?
Councillor Kim.
Yes, I mean, if any wall is a good wall, so whether it's public property or private property, if someone's willing to contribute a wall, and who knows, it could also be, I've even considered that it might even be a wall that doesn't even exist yet. If there are developments that are coming online over the next couple of years, and if we want to work with developers who want to deliberately create a blank slate for us, that would be one of the reasons why I would be willing to wait a couple of years and get that perfect blank canvas. So to answer Councillor Thompson's question, it could be public or private.
Great, thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I do like that Councillor Kim, you're very flexible about waiting as opposed to just finding a wall for the sake of finding a wall. I do think that there's a special place for the art that you're proposing, and I think it's a great idea to showcase diversity. As far as like the current wall that we have, Councillor Humphries, you were saying it was black and white prior. I just don't remember. Is that true? You don't know?
Mr. Mayor, I could be wrong. I'm so sorry. I could be getting mixed up. Sorry.
Does anybody know? Staff?
Well,
I would ask Mr. Downey because he's probably been here a lot, so you might know. But I do believe Mr. Downey was 96 when they changed it. Maybe I'm wrong on that date. That's roughly around then.
No, it was, through you, Mr. Mayor, it was around 2002. And it used to be a mural called Our Town. And
yeah.
And it was then changed to the mural seat before you.
Okay, thank you. So I mean, I don't know. This seems to be a wall that we paint and we refresh, and it's been, I guess, almost 20 years. And I think any, like you said, it could be a private wall, public wall. that maybe this could be a refresh too. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask the property owner and whether or not, that Four Corners would deserve a refresh too, as an option if there was nothing, moving forward that we could find that was appropriate or whatnot. It just, I think it's a great option either or. That's all I'm going to say. And I don't know how you feel about that, but, I think it's great. And it would really be nice by the Rainbow Crosswalk as well, inclusivity and at our major Four Corners. It would just bode well, I think. But wherever we end up deciding and the recommendations, I guess we'll wait and see. But thank you for bringing it forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Before I pass it to you, Councillor Kim, to wrap up, just say, great motion, great idea. Looking forward to it. I'll throw out one suggestion. Maybe we can speak to the property owner on the west side of Yonge and Wellington. Maybe they would be willing to do an extension of what's already there. So that way we have a mural on both sides. So that might be something that maybe we could have staff investigate. I think that'd be great. But thank you for bringing this forward. Excellent idea. Back to you, Councillor Kim.
Thank you. That's an excellent idea. I was thinking about, I'm not sure if you're referring to bacon basketware. Is that what you're referring to, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Kim, referring basically from the lights. It
Okay,
could
right.
be a bacon basketware, depending on how big you would want to do it. So it could be just that building. But somewhere in that vicinity, that way it stays within that area.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, and I guess my closing comment would be to respond to Councillor Gallo. That's point well taken, and there was no intent to imply that the original artists or originators had planned to exclude anyone. With each time period, people have different thoughts, trends are different, and that was just the time of that was just the thoughts of the day, and so there was no negative thoughts on my mind. It's just now in 2020 things have changed, and that was it. But thank you all for your support. I'm really looking forward to this because everyone, even on TripAdvisor, you see this mural on TripAdvisor as top things to see in Aurora. So to have a sequel to it would be quite an exciting thing to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, call a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record a vote for Councillor Kim's motion on this evening's agenda. Councillor Kim, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mayor Marakis?
Yes.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Humphreys?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
Councillor Gardner? Councillor, you're on mute.
So I am. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Regional report. Would someone like to move that? Receive for information. Councillor Humphreys, second. Councillor Kim, any comments or questions on the regional report? Seeing none. Mr. Clerk?
Oh.
Councillor Gardner?
No, I'll ask it under new business, I think, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record a vote for the regional report. Councillor Gardner?
Yes.
Mayor Marakis?
Yes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
Councillor Gallo?
Yes.
Councillor Humphreys?
Yes. Sorry.
You, Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
And Councillor Gilliland.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. New business. I will go around the virtual room. Councillor Gallo, new business.
It's not new business, but just to congratulate David Tomlinson naming the nature reserve after him. Well deserved for all his contribution to the town.
Thank you, indeed. Councillor Kim. New
I don't
business.
have any new business, but I wanted to thank Councillor Gallo for bringing the motion to name the park or the trail after Mr. Tomlinson. Really blesses my heart to see a humble couple like that and enjoy that moment, because it was a lifelong work for him. And I thank Councillor Gardner for recognizing his achievement, and just, it's going to be, the town is grateful for that.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland, new business.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Downey. I'd sent an email quite a few days ago in requesting, I just kind of, I guess, gave a little bit of my opinion about some of the signs on the garbage cans that were out in the neighborhoods, and requesting whether or not our report could be brought forward a much sooner than May. And I was wondering if you could shed some light on that.
Mr. Downey?
Certainly. So the report we did on the dog park, we had identified some devices that people could use for disposal of dog waste. And so we had direction from council to come back with a report. And we should be able to report back to council in January with regards to the cost of the capital costs and operating costs for those bins.
Councillor?
Thank you. So at least it's moved up from May to January then.
Absolutely. We need to get this issue addressed, or at least brought forward to council for some resolution. And so talking to staff, we felt that January was a doable date.
Thank you. And I guess I could ask this offline, but just quickly, the information that I had sent you, was that something that you'd be able to take in consideration in the report and your research?
Mr. Downey?
Excuse me, I apologize, I was on mute. Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can do that. As I say, we're going to try to give council as many options as possible with how we might address this issue. So all avenues will be explored. And so thank you for any information you can bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I trust during this time between now and what we decide to do as a resolution, we will not be removing any trash cans until we find a solution in this matter.
Mr. Downey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't plan on removing any trash receptacles. We're doing our best to educate people on the proper disposal of dog waste. It is a bit of an uphill battle, but we are doing our best to encourage people to take their dog waste home with them and put it in the green bin. The garbage cans within the parks are not there to dispose of dog waste.
Councillor?
Thank you. Well, I look forward to your report in January about a solution offering residents a proper disposal. But in the meantime, education is what we're doing. Although I guess I have my opinions about it, and we'll discuss it in January. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just following on the comments about David Tomlinson, I have to say that he's also a very gracious man, because the plan that's in place at the moment is not the plan that he composed. And I think, he's come to council over the years to express his dissatisfaction about that. But he was very gracious with the opening and very pleased with the accomplishment. And it's been a lot of work, and it's gone through many of my councils, and it hasn't been easy. I'm not sure, Mr. Mayor, if you can answer this, and if you can't, could you find out, please? The road, Yonge Street under the railway bridge, it's under repair for the third time in my recent memory, and there's nothing happening there. There's been nothing happening there, I don't know, since the summer. During the summer, there was nothing happening. And I think some residents in the area, well, generally residents traveling on that road, because now it's a one lane, in each direction. I'm getting calls. Do you have any information about this that I can tell them?
And I will get a more fulsome update, but I can tell you that they stopped due to the amount of water, and they've been waiting for it to kind of, I guess, in essence, dry up. But I will get you a full update because I've been meaning to talk to the commissioner myself, and I just didn't get a chance with everything that's going on. But I will speak to him tomorrow, and I can get you a full update on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it certainly wouldn't be any surprise that there's water there because that's been the problem the last 2 times they've tried to fix it. So I would really like to know the explanation as to why that wasn't, or why they couldn't plan for that. The other question, it's also regional, but it's also ours, is Tamarack Park. Again, work stopped on that. That's a project between the town and the region, I believe. And it's the same, there's a water issue there. And I can tell you there are a lot of residents, and I'm in that area. There are a lot of unhappy residents. There's one who's been doing most of the emailing, but she represents a lot of people. So if you could try and figure out that mystery. I think the main thing is the residents would like to have the park. I was walking on the Arboretum, and I've been told this before, but on our paved trails, apparently there's problems with bicycles coming up quickly behind people without, ringing bells. And I have to tell you, we had to jump aside pretty quickly to avoid that bicycle. We were walking side by side. So is there anything that any staff, it's just, if you could perhaps discuss this with staff, is there anything that can be done with respect to signage or just anything? Because I can see that's an accident waiting to happen.
Downey? Or Ms. McDougall?
Actually, it's me. That's fine. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's been a long-standing issue with regards to bicycles on trails. We do our best to try to inform cyclists that it's a mixed trail and people are walking, and you need to certainly notify them as you're driving by. We do have some signage, but we can certainly add additional signage. Right now, there's no regulation that says they can't use the trail. And we're not interested in excluding bicycles from the trail. We just want to make sure that they do it safely. So I'll take a look at the signage if we may need some additional signage. But once again, a little bit like dog waste in garbage cans and parks, we need to educate the public on the proper use of trails with bicycles and pedestrians.
And Councillor, I'll just add that I was walking on the Tim Jones Trail, and when it connects to the Tom Taylor Trail, when you move into Newmarket, and I can say that it happens in Newmarket as well. So it's not just it's not just happening here. But I agree with Mr. Downey. I think it's something that we need to educate cyclists that it's a mixed use trail and that they need to just make people aware that they'll be coming up behind them. Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, and in fact, a few weeks ago on that trail, a woman was startled by a bicycle or had some incident with a bicycle, and she fell and she broke her ankle. It's unfortunate. The last thing is with respect to trees, maybe back to Mr. Downey, if I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, can we send out some educational information to residents in the Heritage District and the town park so that they're aware that they have to, that they're not allowed to cut down their trees unless they go through a process?
Mr. Downey?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have to work with Dave Waters on this. I think that Dave has a list of all the listed or heritage properties. So we could put a standard letter out to all of those properties, and then so maybe Dave and I can work together on if he could give me the addresses, we could get the letters out, just informing them that no trees can be removed from their properties without going through the Heritage Committee.
Councillor Gardner, anything else? New business?
Well, I guess the follow-up question is then, when are we expecting to have this list of listed properties?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we have approximately over 400 listed properties in the town. And we have that list now. We do have a capital project that was approved last year to hire a consultant to review the listings and prioritize those that require designation under the Act, and to drop those that have no heritage or architectural value at all, as per the Act. So I can supply that list for Mr. Downey. I also suggest we probably would go through, or we would post on the town's website as well. So we would do a comprehensive engagement on this. So the question is, do we do it now or do we wait? I'm more than willing to provide that list to Mr. Downey. We can work together on a letter and have it ready shortly.
Thank you. Councilor Gardner?
So I mean, it depends when we're going to have this list of appropriate listed properties. From what you're saying, this could take many more months. But this also could be in the, do you know how old a tree has to be a heritage tree?
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That's a good question. I'm going to refer that question to Mr. Downey.
Good one, Mr. Waters.
Okay.
Downey?
Okay, good pass, Dave. I caught that one. Through you, Mr. Mayor, heritage tree doesn't have to be a particular age. It has to go through a particular process. So
Oh, okay.
designated by the province. And for instance, the large oak in front of 22 Church Street is a heritage tree. So it's a designation process.
Okay.
But for definition within the bylaw, it's any tree within a designated area, or a heritage tree, because it could be a heritage tree outside a heritage area, and it still becomes a heritage tree. If you get that. So every tree in a heritage zone is considered a heritage tree, according to the bylaw. But then there are heritage trees outside of designated areas which are also considered heritage trees.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Downey. If you wouldn't mind just checking to see if that town park area is a heritage district. And if it isn't, is it all trees on listed and designated properties outside of a heritage district? If you could just provide clarification on that, that'd be great.
Certainly. Actually, David Waters and I were talking today. So the town park itself is designated.
Yes.
The neighborhood is not.
Yes.
But there are listed properties within that neighborhood.
And heritage properties.
Correct. So those properties would be subject to the tree bylaw, knowing that they would have to go through the Heritage Committee in order to remove any trees.
Thank you. So I'll leave it to the two directors. I mean, because I think it's information that everybody who is in a listed or heritage house needs to have. It would just save some trouble and hopefully some trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Humphries, new business?
Yes, just two things. One, I just wanted to compliment staff under David Waters, Jeremy and Glenn. Although there's been lots of, Johnson Road construction, Bailey and Holman, I've got nothing but amazing feedback from the residents of how great they've been and how much they've done a great job to handle face-to-face conversations and first point of contact with the town with information or questions they have. So nothing but great stuff. So I wanted to thank you. It's a huge job and they've managed it really well during this tough time. It looks like construction on the roads are getting there. I want to thank Mr. Waters for sending out the official communication for residents, and maybe we can make that a sort of a standard way of communicating in the future. I don't know if Mr. Waters, if that you'd like to touch on that, and not just suggesting just your area, maybe in any areas that make a difference when there's a project going on within, if it's affected. I don't know your thoughts, Mr. Waters, through Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Waters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's one thing I've noticed when I came to the town on some of these construction projects, that the communication was sort of haphazard at times. And I think it's really important that the communication be very, very easy to understand and frequent. So I will strive to undertake that as part of the next capital project that involves something of this nature.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Mr. Waters, I can't thank you enough. I mean, that would be very significant improvement and change. And I know that even when there's nothing much to report, no news isn't good news to residents who are sort of trying to figure out what's going on. So, and if a timeline changes in an updated email or however you choose to communicate, it makes a massive difference. So I wanted to thank you again to you and Anka and the team. They've done it's a hard battle to try to manage this, but done very well. So I wanted to thank you guys very much. There was something else, Mr. Mayor, but it's slipped my mind. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Go ahead. You lost it again? I'll just talk to the director about that. I'm okay. I lost it again. I came back and Councilor Thompson, new business?
Yes, I do. There's no doubt that this year has been tough and challenging and all. And I guess if you could try and find any positive out of COVID was the fact that, throughout the spring and the summer, our residents were getting outside. You'd see more of them walking in the neighborhood or exercising or riding a bike or going on trails. But now we're heading into the winter. And, by some accounts, they're talking about it being, a long winter or, a heavy snow winter or some sort of, again, challenge if we have to be indoors again. And so I'd like to put it out there to staff to try and find ways to get our residents out of their house and exercising and more involved. And I think that, as we head into the budget season, perhaps some conversation around outdoor rinks, how can we increase the number that we have? How can we look maybe utilizing the trails better? I think we need for our residents, not just from an exercise perspective, but I'm sure for some, being housebound throughout the winter can be hard on your mental health. And so this can be something that we can do to help our residents as well. And so I think for tonight, I just wanted to throw it out there as a challenge to staff to try and look at ways to get our residents engaged and active if COVID and phase 2 and our facilities, remain limited going forward. And I think that outdoor rinks and trails may be something of benefit for all.
Thank you, Councilor. Actually, and to kind of piggyback on that, obviously, as we've mentioned before, we are into a modified stage 2, which the 28 days would expire November 14th. We're not guaranteed that we will be out of it by the 14th. The province might extend it or they might not. Ultimately, it's a provincial decision. I can tell you for a fact that I'll be advocating that we move out of that modified stage 2 to get our local restaurants, our gyms, and everyone back up and open, but safely. And so I'll be working with my colleagues at the region, looking at what we can do to present a case to the province. It's going to be a tough case because the numbers that they're presenting at this point, they're continuously rising. And so I'm going to make a plea to our residents that if we want to make sure that we get back to where our local businesses, where your neighbors, your family, your friends can have their businesses open, please adhere to the policies, the guidelines, the protocols being put in place. Wash your hands, maintain physical distancing, wear a mask when you're in an enclosed space. It's for the benefit of all of us, for the whole community. You're doing this not just for yourself, for the community. And so I'm asking all of you, please. So with that, I will move to bylaws. Someone like to move the bylaws? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Humphreys. Comments? Councillor Gallo.
Just bylaw 12.2, if I could just quickly through you to get maybe Mr. Waters to explain that one.
Sure, Mr. Waters.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is a part lot control bylaw that relates to Capriole Avenue and William Graham Drive. It had to be renewed because the ownership title issues for the 10 townhouses have not closed yet. So that's why we're presenting the bylaw again and extending the expiry date. The bylaw needs to be reestablished.
Councillor,
Or for those transactions, or for those transactions to be completed.
Councillor.
And through you, nothing has changed from when council originally passed that bylaw.
That's correct, Councillor Gallo.
Councillor,
Thank you.
any other comments, questions? Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record vote for the bylaws on tonight's agenda. Councillor Humphries,
Yes.
Councillor Kim,
Yes.
Councillor Thompson,
Yes.
Councillor Gardner,
Yes.
Councillor Gallo,
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland,
Yes.
and Mayor Maracus.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that. Councillor Humphries, second. Councillor Kim. Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Record vote for the confirming bylaw. Councillor Gardner,
Yes.
Mayor Maracus,
Yes.
Councillor Kim,
Yes.
Councillor Humphries,
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland,
Yes.
Councillor Gallo,
Yes.
and Councillor Thompson. Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Kim, second by Councillor Humphries. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you, everyone, and